in order to achieve a strong market position, you need the strategy, you need the story and the toolbox to use throughout of your activities, and then you need a plan, a go-to-market plan, basically, to execute all that.
I see AI as the amplifier of what we do in terms of we can optimize our processes, which we're doing, we can evolve, and we can transform our processes.
The three keys that we see for market position, which is the way we work. We talk about achieving market positioning through a strong mindset.
A brand is much more than a logo. So we start off saying, yes, you can have the image, you can have the colors, you can have the right name, but that's not a brand.
And the worst thing that can happen to your brand is welcome to Ideas to Scale. Today, we're going to start with how to position yourself and what are the keys to really achieve a strong brand position and a strong market position.
Amazing. So in this Ideas to Scale, the first thing we do when we start with a project or a brand or a problem, we understand what is it that we're trying to solve for. And the very essence of it is why I want to go enter a new market. I want to create a new product or service. I want to serve, or my brand is actually being not very in tune with the audience that I'm serving, or I'm changing segments. So that the very first thing we do is understand what problem we're solving for, right?
Exactly. And what's the difference? We always talk about what the difference is between having a strong brand and having a strong market position. And it's not the same, right? A strong market position is something that you achieve through being a reference in your segment, through being the go-to in your segment. Right. A strong brand is built through consistency and a lot of other factors that we can go into. But the market position is something that includes a strong brand, right? So
Well, first, let's unpack this.
Yes.
A brand is much more than a logo. So we start off saying, yes, you can have the image, you can have the colors, you can have the right name, but that's not a brand. You need to make it a brand in terms of the perception of the audience or your clients that are talking to. So that's the first thing that we say. And the other aspect is maybe you're an amazing company and you're not telling the world. So it's not communicated, it's not known. So that's when we see you create a brand in the mind of the consumer or mind of your client, and then you need to communicate it as well and be consistent in the process. So that's where you're coming from. It's like we need to create the brand conceptually, and yes, the image, the systems, the messaging, and everything encompasses the experience and the idea that the person has in their mind. That's building the brand. And then on the marketing side is getting consistent right up front where your market is, where your audience is.
Let's talk about how we meet clients and why this happens and how we met each other, and that's why we did it. Just yesterday, somebody actually was telling me, you do brands, but you also execute on the marketing. And I said, yes, that's what's unique about us. Why? So we got together. You were only doing mostly branding. I was only doing mostly communications. And whenever I had a branding project, I was intimidated by it, honestly, like a few years ago. Mm. And I remember you also saying, like, I don't want to do the communication. I don't want to do the marketing. But the reality is that to build a strong brand, you need both together. And that's why we do that.
Absolutely.
So we created a methodology that integrates both branding and communications, because a brand that doesn't speak is a brand that doesn't exist.
Absolutely. And our premise, and that's what got us together, is like we believe in the power of brands, right? And we're scaling companies, hence our name, Scalto. And by the way, 5 years today, which is amazing. But the experience was, and the way we got together is like having these two sides of the same coin. Working together in synchronicity and actually saying, okay, this is the brand, this is what I should stand for, and then communicate it and be present. So what we actually do is more on the mindset, the branding side, the scaling, and how do we do that? And then on the activation side, or on the continuous being present and being actually relevant in the market. And the same, and that the byproduct of that, and is one of the levers that we discovered together, is as the CEOs and the leaders of companies, which are amazing lever that we can build and to scale companies internally as well externally, having that CEO well positioned. So it's more on the market positioning as to what the company does, how is it communicating, and what's the engine that goes behind the marketing, as well as the CEO at play. So those are the three. Once we got together and we got, okay, this is our playbook. We need to have a strong brand. We need to have an amazing system for execution marketing, and we need to have the CEO working towards, or actually being the spearhead of the scaling process of the company.
So let's talk about okay, the three keys that we see for market positioning, which is the way we work. We talk about achieving market positioning through a strong mindset, a strong, business plan, and achievable and aligned positioning in terms of where we want to take the organization. Right. Then we talk about what's the story. The story we're going to tell is about the brand itself and about the messaging around it. And then how do you take it to the market and come it alive? And that's the marketing plan and the customer journey and what happens. So those are the three keys that we can unpack here and say to achieve that strong market positioning, right? So let's go one by one. So first, the number one way to really go and grab a market is to define what market it is and where you want to go, right? That's your business plan. And the business plan is composed of the why, the golden circle. We work on that a lot. And that's something that is important to us because the reason for existence is key. Existence in an organization is key. But then a lot of other definitions that help the team align and the organization align around, okay, where are we taking this? What space do we intentionally want to grab from the market?
Right. So going, and maybe we can translate that with an example.
Right.
So we have, say a client comes to us saying, Gabby, Ale, we need to, we are thinking of going into the US, coming into the US. It's a cybersecurity company coming into the US from Latin America. How do we approach the market? So the first thing is, given that in essence, we do ambition-driven strategies as opposed to condition-driven strategies, it's like, I don't want to see what you have. I want to see the opportunities. And so how do we take you there with the branding and communications? So this person came to us. It's like, okay, what do we do? And we start saying, okay, what is the big expensive problem we're solving for whom? And that's the first segment of ours. It's like defining your scaling mindset is, what is your value proposition? Who are you talking to? What is the job to be done? Why would they hire this company, the cybersecurity company? And that would be, in essence, saying, okay, this is who I'm talking to. And so in the country that, remember that we had in the country, they would speak to the CEO of the company. Coming to the US, they would speak to a CTO or somebody at the lower levels of a company. So it's a different. And even if you're going from US to Latin America, it's completely different. You need to understand how do you communicate and where do you reach them? How do you solve for them? What's the pain point?
Yeah. And a lot of the times we actually have to go through a change in the offering, a change in the way you present the offering, a change in the services. Because they actually have to, well, for organizations that we help from LATAM to the US, you have to segment your offering. Because here is a highly segmented market.
You are like the number one. What's your statement?
Niche.
What's your statement? The reaches? What's your statement?
The reaches is in the niches.
There we go.
That one, yes. Well, no, also make your niche, choose your niche, then make it smaller. And once you made it smaller, make it smaller again.
Right.
That's my motto.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's phase one, really work on ambition driven.
Right. And then
And
for that company, in the first modules that we have in scaling mindset, it's like, okay, we identify who you're talking to, but then we also identify what are the growth opportunities. Maybe in Latin America, you were attending this segment or this type of client or this solution. So we'd figure out for them what is the growth opportunities. And that's challenging because they usually come and it's like, oh, in Latin America, we do, excuse my Spanglish, toderos. We do everything for everything. No. Here you need to actually find a niche and that niche. So we helped them understand who they were targeting to. So cybersecurity could be huge. So we targeted into one segment, and that's the growth opportunity we found. So that's having that first section of understanding strategic north that the company's going to, that guides us to the brand development, which is the next phase.
and also it's not only about entering new markets, it's also about launching new products.
Absolutely.
Or expanding your market positioning. All of that, it always requires an alignment in terms of strategy. And then phase two is, okay, let's build a story. And the story is connected to that strong, ambitious, driven position you want to reach.
Right.
It's not just nice messaging on a board, which is basically what I always used to get. Like, it's very common I used to get a lot of projects that were just do my website. And I was like, yeah, let's do a website. Who's doing your messaging? And then the messaging would escalate into, no, but I don't want to offer this. And I don't want to offer that. I don't want to present myself like this. I don't want to present. So it's like, okay, we need a business strategy. That's why we do that as phase one. But phase two is, okay, now we can land this into messaging that makes sense to your stakeholders that we just defined in your strategy.
You can see the difference here. She's into messaging, and the same experience I have is on the branding side. So, create me a logo, and create me a logo is no, because it becomes a beauty contest. It's like it seems like this, it looks like this. No. We have a strategy. We need a beautiful logo, but serves the strategy. So in this phase, we go into, okay, now we know where we're heading. Let's start deciphering what are the attributes, what's the personality, what's the tone, what's the messaging, what's the wow statement, how are you going to go into the market and say, this is what we do? We're not touching the brand, the logo just yet. Bear in mind, it's not a huge, long project. It's just like it has a rigorous pieces of elements that work us towards the having then not a beauty contest when we reach the branding or the
Exactly. That's
logo.
what I always say. Like, you need to agree on what it needs to communicate first. Because if you agree on what it needs to communicate, then it's not about I like it or I don't like it. It's about, is it communicating what you needed to communicate?
Absolutely.
And is it conveying the message that you wanted to convey? Good. So that's phase two.
The cybersecurity company coming from that angle saying, okay, we decided what are the attributes? What are the attributes that really resonated? What's the positioning? You're actually going to become this super magician helping, if that's for the personality type that we go to. And then the messaging goes into that. So we have for the stakeholders and for the CTO, how are we communicating, when and which, and again, later on, which channel are we going to use to communicate?
Exactly what we did also with the family office or the financial advisory firm. All of them also had this issue of different leaders and having different perceptions on how to communicate or how to even, like, they would go into a logo and say, I like this line like this, I like this line like that. So we go back to the science and the communications behind that,
right,
so that we can reach an agreement. Good.
Right.
So, and then number 3 is actually execution, right?
No, wait. We're going the messaging, and then you're missing the side of the brand. So
Okay.
there's once we understand where we're heading and what's the messaging, what's the attributes, what's the personality, we're going to say, okay, you said, I want a website. Okay, how would the website, what's the user experience should be like? How are we engaging in LinkedIn profiles? How are we engaging in design aspects of the coloring, if it's the right name. We do a lot of names, Amaranth, Insignio, names that we have in the market, we have created. And once we have that, we go into the image and the whole identity of colors, imagery, systems, iconography. We go into building that into the level or in the depth that the brand needs. So if we're doing Punta Cana, it would be for all the assets or all the companies that need it or the brands that need to be deployment. So we do brand architecture, positionings. We do all that depending on the client needs. So it's not overwhelming, but at the very end, if an entrepreneur or a financial advisor comes to us, it's like, you need to have your pitch deck, you need to have your company deck, you need to have your LinkedIn profile, you need to have like certain things that are non-negotiable in terms of delivering those for them to be successful in scaling.
Right. So that's the development of all the tools you need.
Right.
And that's what we do. And that way you have a strong toolbox that gives you consistency. So we said, in order to achieve a strong market position, you need the strategy, you need the story and the toolbox to
Right.
say and to use throughout of your activities. And then you need a plan, a go-to-market plan, basically, to execute all of that.
That's a third part. The third aspect is like once you have the message, your scaling mindset, you have your story and thought leadership, and then we go into the how do we activate the experience, and we go in depth as to what's the customer journey or your client journey, and where are the pain points, where is it broken, what do we need to fix? Is it on the lead gen side? Is it on the loyalty side? Depending on where we're at. That's where we activate and hone in and zoom in into the messaging towards those moments, because it's key. I mean, it's how you make your audience feel in those particular touch points that are critical in converting and generating awareness and doing all these. So we go into that process, and then we create the marketing plan that we've devised.
So, and that's again, it's not about making it a long, complicated process, but it's about having all the tools throughout the process for you to go to market in an efficient way and for you to have all of that you need to achieve that market positioning that
Right.
you want to.
At the end, what does the client, a typical client has, what do they agree, what the outcomes, the right outcomes that they have? They end up with a roadmap as to where they should be heading, the story and the typical messages that you need to have, the assets that you need to have in terms of the brand, the logo, and all the activations. Where are we connecting? And how are we connecting? And it's key to have ambassadors. It's key to have people that replicate your story and your narrative. And then having a thorough plan as to how do you execute. So that's the first side of what we do in terms of marketing positioning.
Okay, so that's the way to achieve a strong market positioning.